"You think you can speak to me like that?" she whispered under her breath, the words barely audible above the clinking of glasses and soft chatter filling the upscale restaurant, her voice carrying a tremor of restrained frustration that only those close could sense. The room's ambient light cast a warm glow across the polished tables, highlighting the tense posture of the female protagonist, a dark-skinned woman maintaining an impeccable composure despite the uncomfortable proximity of her ex-husband who leaned aggressively across the table, his tone sharp and commanding as he attempted to assert control, unaware that the mafia boss, a strikingly white-skinned man exuding calm authority and dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his commanding presence, sat at the next table observing with quiet calculation. His eyes narrowing subtly as he assessed the dynamic and the slight rise in the woman's chest indicating her mounting tension. Patrons continued their meals, oblivious to the undercurrent of emotional charge, while she discreetly adjusted the cuff of her sleeve and straightened her posture, signaling to herself that she would not be intimidated publicly, her internal monologue a mix of anxiety and determination. The subtle clink of silverware punctuating the moment as she took a measured sip of water, feeling the mafia boss's gaze like a protective shield even though he had yet to intervene, his presence alone creating a palpable shift in the atmosphere, a silent challenge to the husband who remained unaware, continuing his barrage of pointed questions and veiled insults, while she maintained her dignity. The dark fabric of her dress smooth against her skin and her expression a careful balance of poise and alertness, as the mafia boss subtly shifted in his seat, leaning just slightly to observe the husband's behavior more clearly, the tension between power and vulnerability creating an almost cinematic tableau in which every glance and gesture carried weight. She subtly met his eyes across the space, a flicker of acknowledgement passing between them, a silent reassurance that help was near. Without breaking the flow of the ongoing confrontation, the soft background music juxtaposed against the quiet storm of emotions at the table, and as the husband continued, unaware of the scrutiny from the nearby table, she felt a mixture of relief and apprehension, knowing that the evening could shift in an instant. That one careful move from the mafia boss could restore her confidence and change the power dynamic entirely, a careful dance of social awareness, observation, and emotional resilience. The room seeming to hold its breath in the small pockets of space between each spoken word, every subtle shift in posture and gaze charged with meaning, encapsulating the high-stakes tension of the moment where protection, authority, and personal strength intersect in a quiet yet compelling display of dark romance, setting the stage for the unfolding narrative as the characters prepared for what would inevitably be a defining interaction that evening. She stepped away from the tense scene at the table, her mind racing as she navigated through the softly lit corridors of the upscale hotel, her dark skin gleaming subtly under the ambient lights, each step measured and deliberate, ensuring that her composure remained intact despite the lingering adrenaline from the encounter. The gentle hum of the elevator provided a quiet backdrop as she reached the lobby, observing patrons engrossed in their own worlds, unaware of the emotional storm she had just weathered, and she allowed herself a moment to adjust her posture, smoothing the fabric of her dress and straightening her shoulders, mentally preparing for the upcoming meeting with her child's caregiver, knowing that the next conversation would require both grace and firm resolve. As she entered the private lounge, the familiar scent of polished wood and fresh flowers greeted her, creating a sense of calm contrasted against the residual tension, and she spotted the white-skinned mafia boss seated discreetly at a corner table, his sharp gaze softening as he noticed her approach, a silent acknowledgement passing between them that conveyed understanding and protection without a word being spoken. She took a seat across from him, noting the subtle way he arranged his posture to offer support, a silent shield against the complexities she faced, and as she detailed her concerns about navigating her post-divorce life and ensuring her child's well-being, his attentive expression and slight nods offered reassurance, each gesture reinforcing the sense of security he provided, creating a delicate balance of power and empathy that defined their interactions. The conversation shifted seamlessly to practical matters, discussing schedules, appointments, and responsibilities with precision and clarity, her voice steady and confident, revealing her intelligence and capability while maintaining the warmth and care that underscored her role as a mother. Through each exchange, the undercurrent of unspoken trust grew, the mafia boss's presence amplifying her confidence, and she felt the subtle tension of the earlier confrontation begin to ebb, replaced by a growing sense of strategic partnership, a realization that she was not navigating these challenges alone. As they concluded their meeting, she rose with a composed grace, her thoughts already on the next steps, aware that the presence of the Mafia Boss had shifted the dynamics of her daily life. His protective vigilance and understanding providing a foundation upon which she could act decisively and calmly, the encounter leaving her with renewed determination and a quiet sense of reassurance. The complexities of her world manageable with careful planning, acute awareness, and the subtle yet unwavering support that accompanied her at every turn. As the morning sunlight streamed through the half-open blinds, she carefully arranged the breakfast on the small kitchen table, her movements precise and deliberate, the warm glow highlighting her dark skin and the subtle expression of focus mixed with a touch of anxiety on her face, knowing that every step of the day mattered for her child's routine and her own sense of stability. Outside the window, the city stirred to life, the distant hum of traffic and occasional sirens blending into a comforting rhythm, while she adjusted the placement of cutlery and napkins, mentally reviewing the conversations she needed to have and the tasks she had to manage, her mind balancing the practicalities of daily life with the lingering awareness of the Mafia Boss's protective presence that had shadowed her through the previous evening's events. She poured coffee into 2 cups, steam curling upwards, a small ritual that grounded her, and she glanced at the child's school bag neatly packed beside the chair, a reminder of responsibilities that required both attention and affection. Then she heard the soft knock on the door and knew it was time to meet the Mafia Boss in a neutral location to discuss delicate matters that had arisen overnight, her heart quickening but her posture remaining composed, a mixture of anticipation and cautious relief settling over her as she prepared to leave. Stepping outside, she drew her coat tightly around her, feeling the crisp air brush against her skin and invigorate her senses, the cityscape unfolding with familiar sights that she navigated with practiced ease. Every street and building a small landmark that guided her efficiently to the cafe where the meeting was set, her thoughts a careful mix of strategy and intuition, recalling his earlier words of reassurance and the silent understanding that had passed between them, a bond formed not through sentiment but through shared circumstances and mutual respect. Entering the cafe, the ambient murmur of patrons and clinking of cups greeted her, and she spotted him immediately at the corner table, the white-skinned Mafia Boss scanning the room with the calm authority that contrasted with the gentle attentiveness he displayed towards her, a nod acknowledging her presence and silently inviting her to sit, each step toward the table deliberate, measured, and aware of the subtle tension in the air as she prepared to discuss matters of urgency with someone who, despite the world around them, represented a steadying force. As she settled across from him, the nuances of body language, the slight inclination of his head, and the focused gaze that conveyed attentiveness without intrusion reinforced a sense of security, allowing her to articulate concerns about recent developments, financial decisions, and the subtle maneuvers needed to maintain equilibrium in her personal life, all while balancing the unspoken understanding that their interactions were defined by a delicate combination of trust, strategy, and the unspoken acknowledgement of the influence he wielded, through careful dialogue, respectful listening, and mutual acknowledgement of priorities. The meeting flowed seamlessly, her confidence growing as he responded with pragmatic advice and the occasional gesture of reassurance, the cafe's warm light casting gentle shadows that mirrored the complex, yet quietly supportive dynamic developing between them, leaving her with a renewed sense of purpose and an organized plan for navigating the intricacies of her life with her child, while feeling the protective presence of the Mafia Boss subtly guiding her decisions and reinforcing her confidence. She stepped out of the cafe into the crisp afternoon air, the gentle sunlight illuminating her dark skin and highlighting the subtle tension in her expression, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension as she approached the sleek black car waiting at the curb. The Mafia Boss, his white skin contrasting sharply against his tailored black suit, standing with arms crossed and an unreadable expression that carried both authority and calm assurance, his eyes meeting hers with a brief, acknowledging nod that conveyed an unspoken understanding. As she opened the passenger door, the cool leather interior greeted her, and she settled in, feeling the protective presence of the Mafia Boss beside her without a word being exchanged. The city streets unfolding before them in a rhythm of movement, the hum of traffic punctuated by distant horns, the occasional pedestrian weaving through the scene, all of it forming the backdrop to their quiet, deliberate journey to the location where crucial decisions would be made, and she found herself mentally preparing, reviewing strategies, and reminding herself of the stakes involved, aware of the subtle power dynamic at play between them and the necessity of navigating it carefully. They arrived at a private office building, the polished glass reflecting the late afternoon sky, and as they entered, the receptionist glanced up briefly, immediately understanding the weight of their presence, the Mafia Boss's composure radiating confidence as they moved through the hallway, each step deliberate, the soft click of his shoes on the marble floor a steadying sound, and she mirrored his measured pace. Conscious of maintaining her own poise while acknowledging the influence he wielded, once inside the office, a high-ranking associate waited with a dossier in hand, the Mafia Boss motioning for her to take a seat across from him, and she complied, her posture straight, hands folded neatly on the table, eyes attentive, absorbing every detail, the ambient light casting gentle shadows that accentuated the sharp lines of his face and the thoughtful focus in hers, as they discussed pressing matters. Evaluating options, and outlining the next steps with precision, the conversation flowing seamlessly, guided by mutual respect, strategic thinking, and the quiet understanding that each decision would have far-reaching consequences. Outside the window, the city continued its constant motion. The ebb and flow of traffic a reminder of the larger world beyond the walls of the office, yet within that space, a sense of controlled focus prevailed, the exchange between them blending professional urgency with the subtle undercurrent of trust and cautious reliance, each glance, gesture, and word carrying meaning beyond its immediate surface, creating a dynamic that was both tense and reassuring. As the meeting concluded, the Mafia Boss stood, offering a hand to help her up, the gesture both courteous and commanding, a silent reinforcement of their partnership, and she accepted, feeling a mixture of relief and renewed determination, aware that the challenges ahead would require vigilance, intelligence, and the careful balance of independence and alliance, the drive back through the city serving as a moment to process the discussions, plan the next moves, and acknowledge the silent, steady presence of the Mafia Boss as both a protector and strategic ally, a constant reminder of the delicate balance that governed their intertwined lives and the emerging trust that would shape every step forward. The evening sky painted the city in shades of amber and violet as she stepped out onto the terrace, the cool breeze brushing against her skin and stirring the folds of her elegant dress, her mind racing with thoughts of the unexpected turn her life had taken. The presence of the Mafia Boss, his white skin gleaming in the fading sunlight and the impeccable cut of his suit accentuating his commanding aura, standing a few steps behind her with an expression of calm authority that contrasted with the storm of emotions she felt inside. As they surveyed the rooftop, the city lights beginning to twinkle like distant stars, she felt a strange mix of apprehension and relief knowing he was silently watching over her, his mere presence a shield against the uncertainties that awaited them, every movement deliberate, every gesture measured. Their eyes occasionally meeting with unspoken communication, a subtle acknowledgement of trust and understanding between them that required no words, only the quiet, confident assurance that he would guide them both through whatever challenges lay ahead. The phone call she had received earlier replayed in her mind, the revelation that shifted everything, her ex-husband's actions no longer dominating her thoughts, replaced by the gravity of her situation and the unexpected support offered by the Mafia Boss, a man whose reputation preceded him, yet whose current demeanor reflected a genuine interest in her well-being, not just the strategic implications of his own position. And as she turned to him with a cautious glance, she sensed the unwavering focus in his eyes, the subtle tension in his stance. The way his hands rested loosely at his sides, ready yet composed, a juxtaposition of power and restraint that set the tone for the rest of the evening. They moved together to a secluded corner of the terrace, away from the bustling sound of the city, the wind carrying the faint aroma of blooming night flowers, and she began to recount the events that had led to this moment, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of nerves, the Mafia Boss listening intently, occasionally nodding, offering brief, pointed questions that revealed both his attention to detail and his understanding of the complexity of her emotions, a delicate balance of authority and empathy that allowed her to open up without fear of judgment. As the night deepened, their conversation shifted from past complications to planning the immediate steps forward. Evaluating options, considering potential reactions, each scenario carefully weighed with strategic precision, their combined focus creating a sense of momentum, an unspoken agreement that whatever came next would be faced together. And as they concluded the discussion, the soft glow of the city lights reflecting in their eyes, she felt a mixture of anticipation and reassurance, a recognition that despite the uncertain path ahead, the alignment of their purpose and the silent understanding between them forged a bond that would influence every decision from this moment on, a careful dance of trust, strategy, and the quiet acknowledgement of shared resolve that would guide them through the intricate web of challenges awaiting in the days to come. As dawn began to break over the city skyline, she stood at the balcony of her penthouse, the soft morning light reflecting off the glass, casting subtle patterns across the polished floor, her thoughts swirling around the conversation from the night before. The words of the Mafia Boss still resonating in her mind, his calm yet commanding tone reminding her of the delicate balance between control and compassion that defined him. She watched as the city slowly came alive, the distant hum of traffic blending with the occasional bird call, a reminder that the world continued beyond the walls of her private life, and yet, in this moment, the focus was entirely on the decisions that had to be made, the plans that had to be carefully considered. She turned slightly to see him approaching, his presence as precise and deliberate as always. The white of his suit contrasting sharply with the dark early morning, his gaze steady and attentive, taking in every detail of her expression, reading her mood and readiness for the day ahead. They exchanged no words immediately. The silence between them a comfortable one, filled with mutual understanding and anticipation, a quiet acknowledgement that the path forward required patience and strategy. And as they moved together to the breakfast area, the subtle aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the crisp morning air from the open windows, she realized the magnitude of what had unfolded and what lay ahead, the revelations from the previous evening now guiding the urgency of the decisions to be made. Every motion and glance coordinated with the unspoken rhythm they had developed, an understanding born from necessity and respect. Not just authority and power. As they settled, he listened intently to her report on the communications she had received, his responses measured and precise, questions asked not to interrogate but to clarify, to ensure that the plans would align with the real stakes and potential outcomes. Each suggestion weighed carefully, each directive balanced with an awareness of her capabilities and the trust he had in her judgment, the flow of conversation seamless, a dance of minds operating with clarity and purpose. And as the morning progressed, they began to map out the sequence of actions, contingency plans considered, potential reactions from others anticipated, every step examined under the lens of both practicality and foresight, the shared focus creating a quiet intensity that filled the space. A blend of calm decisiveness and mutual reliance that defined their partnership, the morning sun rising higher, illuminating the room, highlighting the sharp angles of their faces, the determined set of their features. And as they concluded this initial session, a sense of readiness settled over them, a clear understanding that they were prepared to face the challenges ahead together, their bond strengthened by the trials, the discussions, and the silent confidence that had been built, each aware that the world outside waited with its uncertainties, but within this moment, they were aligned, vigilant, and ready. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across the city streets, yet inside the high-rise office, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. She stood by the window, looking down at the morning bustle, her mind racing with the implications of the plan they had just finalized, every detail weighed and considered, her hands resting lightly on the polished railing, the subtle tension in her shoulders betraying the careful control she maintained over her emotions. He approached silently, his presence commanding without a word, the sharp white of his tailored suit contrasting against the dark wood of the floor, his eyes scanning her expression, reading the layers of thought and determination. They exchanged a glance that communicated volumes. No words necessary, a shared understanding born of long experience and mutual respect. The conversation that followed was precise and deliberate, discussing contingencies, potential reactions from allies and rivals, each scenario evaluated with meticulous care, their voices low but steady, harmonizing in focus and purpose. Outside, the city moved in its relentless rhythm, but here, time seemed to stretch, allowing for strategic foresight and careful calibration. She presented her insights, articulating each observation with clarity, while he responded with measured questions. probing just enough to refine the decisions without undermining confidence. The dynamic between them was seamless, a blend of authority, trust, and shared responsibility. As they moved to a conference table, papers and digital devices neatly arranged, the natural light streaming in highlighted the intensity in their expressions. The meticulous coordination of gestures and timing underscored their silent communication. Moments passed as they reviewed maps, messages, and schedules, each detail scrutinized, potential complications anticipated and planned for. The weight of what lay ahead was palpable, yet neither displayed fear, only a steadfast commitment to execution and mutual reliance. In a brief pause, they shared a small, knowing smile. The tension momentarily lifted, reaffirming the bond that had formed through shared challenges. The subtle interplay of respect, understanding, and controlled emotion defined the room. As the morning progressed, strategies solidified, roles reaffirmed, and priorities clarified. The quiet intensity never wavered. And as they concluded this session, there was a sense of readiness. A shared confidence that whatever challenges awaited, they would face them with precision, composure, and unwavering support. The light shifting slightly, casting a warm glow over their focused faces, marking the transition from planning to action. Each aware of the responsibilities, each committed to the partnership, and together, they moved forward, aligned and prepared, every step deliberate, every glance meaningful, as the city continued below, oblivious to the silent choreography unfolding above. Their minds synchronized, their resolve unshaken, and the day began in earnest with the calm determination of those who understood the stakes and the necessity of unity. The morning sun filtered gently through the tall glass windows, illuminating the sleek office where she sat, reviewing notes with a careful, deliberate precision, her hands moving methodically over documents and digital screens, eyes sharp and alert, yet calm, her expression betraying both thoughtfulness and quiet anticipation. He entered the room without a sound, his posture confident and commanding, the crisp lines of his tailored suit reflecting the subtle light, his gaze meeting hers with an unspoken acknowledgement of shared purpose. They exchanged brief, deliberate words, each phrase calculated, each response measured, the air between them filled with the intensity of collaboration. Outside, the city hummed with ordinary life. Unaware of the strategies being refined above, they discussed projections and outcomes. Contingency plans meticulously outlined, every scenario contemplated, and potential risks addressed. As she pointed to charts and data, he nodded in agreement, occasionally asking pointed questions to ensure every variable was accounted for. The mutual respect and trust evident in their interaction formed a rhythm, a silent choreography of understanding and alignment. After some time, they paused briefly, sharing a subtle, knowing look that communicated a depth of connection and confidence in their coordinated efforts. The sunlight shifted, casting elongated shadows across the polished floor, highlighting the intensity in their faces. She adjusted a document, he reviewed a digital report, and together they reconciled the details of their plan with precise care. The office became a quiet stage for the disciplined execution of strategy. Each motion deliberate, each glance meaningful, they moved seamlessly from one task to the next, a synergy that reflected both experience and mutual reliance. Outside, the world continued its predictable pace, while inside, decisions were made that would shape the trajectory of the day, their focus unwavering, the sense of controlled anticipation creating a tension that was both motivating and grounding. They concluded the session with a final review, confirming every point, solidifying roles and responsibilities, a shared commitment to action evident in their composed demeanor. As they gathered materials and prepared to depart, the morning light now full and bright, illuminating their faces with clarity and warmth, a tangible sense of readiness and cohesion lingering, each aware of the importance of precision and unity. Prepared to transition from planning to execution, the scene closing on their composed, determined expressions, the quiet power of collaboration and mutual understanding defining the moment and the path forward. The evening sky over the city turned a warm shade of amber as they stepped out of the building, their movements synchronized with the ease of familiarity, each gesture conveying understanding without the need for words. She adjusted her coat, feeling the subtle chill of the night air brush against her skin, while he maintained a protective presence beside her, his expression calm yet vigilant, a quiet intensity in his gaze that conveyed both assurance and determination. They walked together along the bustling street, the sounds of the city forming a rhythmic backdrop to their coordinated steps, occasional glances exchanged with an unspoken dialogue of trust and connection. As they reached the corner, the distant hum of traffic and city lights reflected off the glass facades, creating patterns of light that danced across their faces. She paused briefly to ensure every detail was noted, reviewing the plan they had solidified moments earlier. He nodded in agreement, acknowledging her attention to detail, their conversation sparse but meaningful, every word carefully chosen and precise. As they moved forward, a sense of anticipation filled the air, the culmination of their efforts evident in the way they navigated the environment with focus and composure, their presence commanding yet understated. They approached the destination with a shared awareness of the importance of timing and execution, her heart steady with confidence in their coordination, his posture unyielding and deliberate. As they entered the building, the interior lighting shifted, casting soft shadows that highlighted the contours of their faces and the determination in their expressions. Each step measured, each movement intentional, they addressed the final tasks with methodical efficiency, confirming arrangements and ensuring clarity in every action. The subtle interplay of their collaboration evident in the rhythm of gestures and expressions. As they completed the sequence of responsibilities, they stood together briefly, a moment of mutual recognition and quiet satisfaction passing between them, the evening around them alive with ordinary activity, contrasting with the deliberate and focused world they had created through their actions. They exited the scenario with the confidence of those who have meticulously prepared, the night air now cool against their skin, carrying the sense of accomplishment and readiness for whatever followed, their final exchange of looks encapsulating the trust, partnership, and shared purpose that had guided them through the day, the city lights twinkling around them, a silent acknowledgement of the path they had navigated and the cohesion that defined their journey, a scene concluding with clarity, precision, and the quiet power of synchronized effort.